The phone in my hand shows 73 missed calls. Each notification makes my stomach twist tighter. Sarah's voice trembles through the speaker as she leaves her latest message. Please, Marcus, you have to call me back. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The colonel won't stop calling. There are people at the house asking questions about you. I set the phone down on my desk and stare at the classified documents spread before me. The morning sun streams through the reinforced windows of the Pentagon, casting shadows across files marked with clearance levels Sarah never knew existed. My wedding ring catches the light, a ring I wore through 3 years of marriage to a woman who thought I was just another grunt counting down days until retirement. She had no idea what those boring meetings really were. No idea that when I said I couldn't talk about work, it wasn't because I was embarrassed. It was because lives depended on silence. Yesterday, she signed papers to sell our house to fund her new life with Derek, her lawyer boyfriend. She laughed when I called to ask what she was doing. You're just a soldier, Marcus. What could you possibly afford? I'm keeping everything. You can sleep in the barracks when you get back. I smiled into that phone and said, thanks for letting me know. What Sarah doesn't understand yet, what Derek's about to learn the hard way, is that some soldiers don't just follow orders. Some of us write them. Before we dive deeper into this story, I want to ask you to hit that like button if you're already hooked, subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Your support means everything, and I read every single comment. The sale happened fast. Too fast for someone who claimed she was thinking things through. Sarah had been planning this for months while I was deployed to Afghanistan. She thought I was just another infantry soldier sweating through patrol routes and counting supply crates. She never questioned why my deployments were shorter than most. Never wondered why certain phone calls made me step outside. Never asked why my gear was always different from the other guys in our neighborhood who served. Derek made it easy for her. He filed the paperwork, handled the legal details, convinced her that military housing allowances and a soldier's salary couldn't possibly cover the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house in Arlington. He's probably drowning in debt. I heard him tell her during one of their late-night calls I wasn't supposed to know about. Military guys always live beyond their means. The irony burned. Our house, the one Sarah was so eager to sell, sat 3 miles from my actual office. Every morning for 3 years, she watched me put on ACUs and drive toward the base, thinking I was heading to some mundane desk job processing requisitions. She never realized those ACUs were a cover. She never realized the base was a 40-minute detour I took to maintain operational security. My real office requires a different kind of uniform, a different kind of clearance, a different kind of oath. The call came in at 0730, just as I was reviewing intelligence briefings for the Joint Chiefs. Major Harrison, my aide announced through the intercom, your wife is on line 3. She says it's urgent. I almost laughed. Sarah never called me during work hours. She said military life was boring and she didn't want to interrupt my soldier stuff. But there she was, voice bright with excitement, telling me about the wonderful opportunity Derek had found. The market is perfect right now, Marcus. Derek says we can get $300,000 over asking price. We'll be set for life. We? I asked. The pause stretched long enough for me to hear Derek coaching her in the background. Well, I'll be set. You'll figure something out. Maybe the military has programs for situations like this. She had already signed. The closing was scheduled for the next morning. Derek had arranged everything. The buyer, the inspector, even the moving company to clear out my belongings while I was overseas. Thanks for letting me know, I said and hung up. Colonel Martinez was waiting in my office when I returned from lunch. He'd been my commanding officer for 2 years, but more importantly, he'd been my friend for 10. He knew about Sarah, knew about the problems, knew why I volunteered for every deployment that kept me away from the house that felt more like a prison with each passing month. I heard about the call, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. What do you need? Nothing official, I replied. Just some clarification on housing protocols. Martinez smiled. The kind of smile that appears right before someone's world gets rearranged. I'll make some calls. That evening, I sat in my temporary quarters reviewing case files and trying not to think about Sarah packing up our life. But certain images kept surfacing. Derek's smug face at the coffee shop where he'd cornered me 6 months earlier, telling me I wasn't good enough for Sarah. The way he'd laughed when I mentioned my work was classified. Sure it is, soldier boy. Let me guess, you guard supplies? By midnight, I had made my decision. Sarah wanted transparency? She was about to get more than she bargained for. The next morning brought clarity in ways Sarah couldn't have imagined. I was deep in a briefing about Middle Eastern supply routes when my aide knocked. Sir? There's a situation developing with your personal matter. My phone screen showed 12 missed calls from Sarah. Then 15. Then 23. Derek had arrived at the house at 9 a.m. sharp with his client, a real estate developer looking to flip properties in military neighborhoods. The three of them stood in my living room, surrounded by boxes Derek had packed with military precision, discussing renovation plans and profit margins. That's when the first call came. Mrs. Harrison? This is Colonel Martinez from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I need to speak with you about your husband's current assignment. Sarah laughed. I think you have the wrong number. My husband is just a regular soldier. He doesn't work with colonels. The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough for Martinez to process what he just heard. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put this sale on hold immediately. Major Harrison's housing situation is directly tied to national security protocols. We have a team en route to secure the premises. The phone went dead. Derek tried to salvage the situation. Military scare tactics, he told Sarah and his client. They do this all the time to intimidate civilians. We're not backing down. That's when the second call came. This time, the voice belonged to someone Derek recognized from news briefings and congressional hearings. A voice that didn't waste time with pleasantries. This is General Patricia Hayes, Joint Chiefs of Staff. Whoever authorized the sale of Major Marcus Harrison's residence has exactly 10 minutes to reverse that decision before this becomes a matter of national security. The real estate developer was already heading for the door. Derek stood frozen in the middle of my living room, still holding the sales contract, trying to process what he just heard. Major. Not sergeant. Not specialist. Major. Sarah's hands shook as she called me for the fourth time. When I finally answered, her voice was barely a whisper. Marcus? What's happening? Who are these people? What did you do? I didn't do anything, Sarah. You did. The truth was spreading through the house like wildfire. Derek's client had made calls. Word was getting out that he tried to sell property belonging to a field-grade officer with a security clearance they couldn't even pronounce. His reputation in real estate circles was about to become very complicated. But Sarah still didn't understand the scope. She thought the calls were about paperwork errors, protocol violations. She had no idea what classification level actually appeared on my personnel file. That's when the cars arrived. 3 black SUVs pulled into our driveway at exactly 1,047 hours. Not rental cars. Not personal vehicles. Government transport with antennas and reinforced panels and windows that didn't reflect light the way normal glass should. Sarah called me in a panic. There are people here, Marcus. They have badges. They want to talk to me about you. About the house. They know things about our marriage. They know about Derek. Of course they did. Security clearances at my level require periodic lifestyle polygraphs. Background investigators interview neighbors, friends, family members. They monitor financial transactions. They know when marriages are failing before the spouses admit it to themselves. Every fight Sarah thought was private had been documented. Every late-night call to Derek had been noted. Every financial decision that seemed unusual got flagged for review. The investigators weren't here to intimidate. They were here to assess whether Sarah's actions represented a security risk. Whether her relationship with Derek, a civilian contractor who worked with defense attorneys, had compromised operational security. Derek was learning this the hard way. His phone rang continuously as clients started asking questions. Other lawyers wondered why the FBI was requesting his case files. His firm's partners wanted to know why military investigators were reviewing his recent real estate transactions. By noon, Sarah was calling every 10 minutes. Please, Marcus, just tell them I didn't know. Tell them I made a mistake. Derek says his license might be in trouble. He says they're investigating his entire practice. I let the calls go to voicemail. The afternoon brought complications Derek never saw coming. Turns out, when you try to liquidate assets belonging to someone with a top-secret/SCI clearance, certain agencies take notice. When those assets include a house positioned within surveillance range of sensitive facilities, the interest becomes official. The counterintelligence folks had questions about Derek's client list. The real estate developer found himself explaining why he'd been photographing military housing. Sarah discovered that selling our house without my consent wasn't just a marital issue. It was potentially a federal crime. My evening briefing was interrupted by another call from Sarah. This time she was crying. They won't leave, Marcus. There are still people here asking questions. Derek left hours ago. He said he can't be associated with this situation. He said I need to fix this myself. The irony was perfect. Derek, who'd spent months convincing Sarah that I was just a low-ranking soldier with no prospects, had abandoned her the moment my real rank became public knowledge. What do you want me to do, Sarah? Make it stop. Please. I'll call off the sale. I'll fix everything. Just make them stop. But it was too late for simple solutions. Sarah had set things in motion that couldn't be undone with apologies. She'd involved civilians in military housing decisions. She'd attempted to liquidate assets tied to classified operations. She'd compromised operational security by discussing my deployment schedule with unauthorized individuals. The calls kept coming. 73 missed calls and counting. Each message more desperate than the last. Marcus, Derek won't answer my calls. His office says he's unavailable. The real estate people are saying the sale is void. There are liens on the house now. Military liens. I don't understand what that means. It means Sarah was about to learn what happens when you assume your husband's job is boring. Are you enjoying this story so far? If you are, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I want to know what you think is going to happen next, so drop your predictions in the comments below. The next phase began with a knock on Sarah's door at 0800 sharp. Not investigators this time. Military legal affairs. Captain Rebecca Stone introduced herself with the kind of professional courtesy that makes civilian attorneys nervous. She carried a briefcase that looked expensive and spoke with the precision of someone who'd prosecuted cases in military courts where careers ended with a single verdict. Mrs. Harrison, I represent your husband in matters related to his military service. We need to discuss the legal implications of yesterday's activities. Sarah tried to explain, tried to justify, tried to make Captain Stone understand that it was all a misunderstanding. She was just trying to start over. Derek had said it was perfectly legal. Ma'am, Captain Stone interrupted, your husband holds a security clearance that requires congressional notification for certain financial changes. Attempting to liquidate his primary residence without proper authorization has triggered several federal protocols. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Congressional notification. Federal protocols. This wasn't about hurt feelings or divorce proceedings. This was about national security. Captain Stone opened her briefcase and removed a stack of documents. Your husband's service record indicates deployment to 17 countries over the past 8 years. His current assignment requires him to brief senior Department of Defense officials on matters of strategic importance. The house you attempted to sell serves as a secure location for classified communications. Sarah's face went white. Our house. The place where she complained about my boring job and Derek's exciting cases. The place where they'd planned their future while I was supposedly counting inventory in some distant warehouse. I didn't know, Sarah whispered. That was intentional, ma'am. Major Harrison's operational security protocols specifically prohibited discussing his actual duties with family members. He followed those protocols precisely. The implications were sinking in. Every time Sarah had mocked my work, I'd been protecting her from information that could have made her a target. Every time she'd wished I had a more exciting career, I'd been briefing generals and colonels about operations she couldn't imagine. Every time Derek had called me a low-ranking grunt, I'd been sitting in rooms where decisions affecting national policy were made. Captain Stone continued. The attempted sale has been flagged by multiple agencies. The FBI has opened a file on Derek Morrison's real estate activities. His client is under investigation for attempting to purchase property in a restricted zone. Your personal communications have been reviewed under provisions of the Patriot Act. Sarah started crying again. Not the angry tears from our fights, but the broken sobs of someone realizing they destroyed something irreplaceable. What happens now? She asked. That depends on Major Harrison's recommendations. He can request a full investigation, which would likely result in federal charges. He can request transfer to a non-sensitive position, which would end his career. Or he can request resolution through military channels. The choice was mine. I could destroy Derek's legal career with a single phone call. I could have Sarah charged with attempting to compromise national security. I could burn their relationship to the ground and watch them face federal investigators for the next 2 years. Or I could take the high road. That evening I called Sarah back. She answered on the first ring. Marcus? Oh God, Marcus, please tell me you can fix this. Derek won't talk to me. His firm put him on administrative leave. The FBI called his office asking about me. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what your job really was. I know you didn't, Sarah. That was the point. Can you make this stop? Please? I'll do anything. The sale is already void. The liens will be removed once the investigation is complete. Derek's situation is between him and the Bar Association. What about us? The question I'd been avoiding. Sarah had spent 3 years married to someone she thought was beneath her ambitions. She'd planned a future with someone who'd convinced her I was a failure. She'd been ready to take everything I'd worked for and start over with a man who'd mocked my service. There is no us, Sarah. There hasn't been for a long time. But I understand now. I know what you really do. I know how important you are. That was the problem. Sarah didn't love me. She'd fallen in love with my rank, my clearance level, my access to information she couldn't have. 3 years of marriage, and she'd never bothered to learn who I really was until government officials started making phone calls. It doesn't matter what you know now, Sarah. It matters what you chose when you thought I was nobody special. The divorce papers were filed the following week. Sarah didn't contest anything. Derek had stopped returning her calls after the state bar opened an investigation into his handling of the real estate transaction. His client, the developer who'd wanted to flip military housing, was facing federal charges for attempting to purchase property in a restricted zone. The house stayed mine. The security investigation concluded that Sarah's actions were motivated by personal grievances rather than foreign influence. Derek's clearance application, the one he'd submitted to work with defense contractors, was denied indefinitely. 6 months later, I received a letter from Sarah. She'd moved back to her hometown and was working at her father's insurance agency. Derek had left the state after the Bar Association suspended his license. She'd heard through mutual friends that I'd been promoted to lieutenant colonel and transferred to a position requiring even higher clearance. The letter was full of apologies and regrets. She wrote about understanding now why I'd been so secretive, about respecting what I did for the country, about wishing she'd been more supportive. But what struck me most was the last paragraph. I realize now that you were never just a soldier. You were serving your country in ways I couldn't understand. I'm sorry I wasn't worthy of the man you really are. She still didn't get it. I was always just a soldier. That was never the problem. The problem was that Sarah needed me to be something more impressive than just a soldier before she could respect the work I did. She needed government officials and federal investigations to convince her that military service mattered. She needed my rank and clearance level to be worthy of her attention. A real partner would have understood that every soldier, regardless of rank or classification, is serving something bigger than themselves. A real partner would have seen the honor in the service itself, not just the prestige that comes with certain assignments. Sarah loved Major Harrison with a top-secret clearance. She never bothered to know Staff Sergeant Harrison who'd enlisted to serve his country. Derek learned the hard way that just a soldier could still reach people he'd never imagined. His legal career ended because he'd underestimated someone he thought was beneath his notice. The irony of their situation was perfect. They'd both spent months planning a future funded by assets they thought belonged to someone unimportant. They'd both discovered that importance isn't determined by what people know about your job, it's determined by how well you do the job nobody sees. Now here's the lesson I learned from all of this and why I wanted to share this story with you. People will always judge you based on what they think they know. Sarah judged me based on the uniform I wore around the house and the stories I couldn't tell. Derek judged me based on his assumptions about military pay and career prospects. But the truth is, your worth isn't determined by other people's understanding of your work. It's determined by your commitment to doing that work with integrity, regardless of who's watching or what credit you receive. Sarah wanted to be married to someone important. She never realized that importance comes from character, not classification levels. Derek wanted to prove he was better than some soldier. He never realized that service to country is more valuable than service to profit margins. The real victory wasn't watching them face consequences. It was realizing that I'd spent 3 years trying to be worthy of someone who didn't understand worth. I'd been seeking approval from people who measured success by all the wrong standards. Military service teaches you that the most important work often happens in silence. The most crucial decisions are made by people whose names never appear in headlines. The most significant contributions come from individuals who serve without recognition. Sarah and Derek learned this lesson the expensive way. They discovered that just a soldier could still reach generals and colonels and federal agencies. They found out that operational security exists for reasons bigger than personal convenience. But the deeper lesson, the one I hope they eventually understand, is that respect should never require federal investigations to earn. Love should never need government credentials to justify itself. True partnership means supporting someone's service without needing to understand every detail. It means trusting that if someone can't talk about their work, maybe there's a good reason for that silence. Sarah called me 73 times because she'd realized her mistake. But the mistake wasn't selling the house. The mistake was 3 years of marriage to someone she'd never bothered to really know. I want to hear what you think about this story. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts about loyalty, respect, and what it really means to support someone's service. I read every single comment and respond to as many as I can. If this story taught you something or reminded you to appreciate the people in your life who serve quietly, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most important work happens in the background, done by people who never ask for recognition. And remember, whether you're military, civilian, first responder, or just someone working hard to provide for your family, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to understand what you do. It's determined by your commitment to doing it well. Thanks for listening to my story. Until next time, remember that the people who truly matter will respect your service before they understand your rank.